All right, welcome. We're diving into something pretty wild today. An idea straight from our source material that's going to make you think. What if the institution of theoretical physics actually works a lot like an organized religion? Yeah, I know. It's a bold claim. So let's get right into it. So, this is the big question, the one that's going to guide us through this whole explainer. Is our most advanced science a religion? I mean, on the surface, that sounds crazy, right? But stick with me, because we're going to break down exactly what our sources are getting at with this argument. Okay, let's be super clear about something right up front. This is not about science versus religion, not even close. What we're doing here is looking at this from a sociological point of view. We're focusing on the people, the human systems, the power structures and the social stuff that happens inside the institution of science. All right, so the first big comparison our sources make is this idea of a new kind of priesthood, a modern-day high priesthood. And it really all boils down to one thing: who controls knowledge and who gets to say what's true. This line from our source material just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? The idea is that a very small, select group of theoretical physicists have become our modern mediators. They're the ones who translate these profound, almost cosmic truths for the rest of us. So the key here isn't really about blind faith. It's about who we as a society trust to interpret a reality that's completely beyond our direct experience. To really get this, we need to talk about something called epistemic authority. It's a key concept. Basically, it's the power you get from being seen as a trusted source of knowledge. It's not just about being right. It's about having the social clout to shape what everyone else considers to be true. And when you look at it side by side like this, the parallel is pretty striking. A traditional priest stands between the divine and the public, interpreting sacred texts. Well, the argument is that a theoretical physicist stands between the cosmos and the public, interpreting complex data. In both cases, the source says their authority comes from mastering knowledge that is, for all practical purposes, completely inaccessible to the average person. And it goes even deeper, down to the actual tools they use. From this point of view, huge, complex experiments, think about something like the Large Hadron Collider, they start to look like modern-day sacred rituals. Our sources claim that physicists can kind of hide behind these experiments because their complexity is so immense that almost no one on the outside can question them. That very incomprehensibility becomes a source of power. So, if you have a priesthood, what else do you need? A sacred language, of course, one that only the initiated can understand. And in this analogy, that sacred language is higher mathematics. Wow, now that is a really provocative statement from our source material. It's suggesting that advanced mathematics isn't just a neutral tool for finding truth, but that it also functions as a social tool. The argument here is that its complexity and even some alleged vagueness lets experts make claims that are just incredibly difficult for anyone else to properly challenge or check. So what does this language actually do, sociologically speaking? Well, a few things. First, it's a gatekeeper. If you can't speak the language, you can't get in the club. It also acts like a shield, protecting core ideas from outside criticism. And this is crucial. The source claims that if the language itself is a bit ambiguous, the power shifts away from the objective math and onto the subjective interpreters, the physicists themselves. Okay, this brings us to a really interesting and maybe a little cynical part of the argument. What actually drives this whole system? Is it all just a pure, noble search for truth? Or are there other, more worldly things at play? And that's really the core tension, isn't it? On the one hand, you've got this incredible human drive, this pure curiosity to understand the universe. But on the other hand, you have a massive institution that needs billions of dollars, prestige, and public buy-in to keep the lights on. So how do those two things mix? And this is where you see that tension, laid out plain as day. The stated motivation, and I'm sure it's genuinely felt by the scientists, is curiosity. But the outcome for the institution, our sources argue, is the gaining of lots of money and status. The system as a whole has to be structured to get the resources it needs to survive. And, whenever an institution has to protect its funding and its reputation, what happens? It can start getting defensive. The argument is that with so much on the line, careers, reputations, billions in grants, the behavior can sometimes look less like open, collaborative science and more like, defending a doctrine. And according to our source, that defense mechanism follows a pretty clear pattern. When someone challenges a core idea, the first step is to attack the challenger. Step 2 is to deny that there are any serious problems with the foundation of the idea. And step 3, the golden rule, is to never, ever admit defeat, because that could threaten the entire institution's public standing. But here's the really fascinating, kind of subtle part. Our source makes it clear that individual physicists will genuinely and sincerely deny that any of this is happening. They really are driven by curiosity. And that just shows how a person can have the purest motives and still be part of a larger system that's also being pushed around by these other more practical institutional forces. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. What are we supposed to take away from looking at physics in this strange new way? What's the bottom line?
And I gotta say this one more time because it's so important. This argument is not saying that physics is wrong. It's not an attack on the science itself. It's just a reminder that science, just like religion, is a deeply human thing. It's done by people, inside of institutions, and it's subject to all the same social pressures as any other part of our society.
So, to sum it all up, this whole argument really stands on three big ideas. First, you have a kind of priesthood that holds exclusive authority. Second, you have a sacred language that keeps the institution insulated. And third, you have an economic system where belief, status, and funding are all tangled together. These are the social forces that, according to this perspective, shape the search for knowledge. We're going to leave you with this one last really powerful line from the source. It suggests that it doesn't matter if we're building a grand cathedral or a giant particle collider. We bring our whole, messy, complicated human nature to the job. Our search for truth and our need for status, our curiosity and our ambition. It's a heck of a thought to end on, right?